Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Staten Island online. I'm Ruth Benson, lay leader for this virtual service, speaking to you from my home on the beautiful North Shore of Staten Island. Welcome. Welcome to this place of peace. May we find some moments of quiet contemplation. Welcome to this place of celebration. May our hearts soar with gratitude for the gift of life. Welcome to this place of sacred love. May we gently hold all that is broken here. Welcome to this place of inquiry. Here, may we be challenged to open our minds and hearts ever wider. Come into this place of community. May we together draw the circle of love and justice ever wider. Welcome to this sacred space. Come, let us worship, celebrate, grieve, and love together. These opening words are from the Reverend Kathy Rion Starr. And now Sarah Dolinar will light our chalice.
In the search for truth and the spirit of love, we unite for worship and fellowship. As an extension of our chalice lighting, I'm going to take a moment to light a candle for some of those who have recently been affected by police brutality. I light a candle for the life of Yvette Smith. I light a candle for the life of Miriam Carey. I light a candle for the life of Shelley Frey. May these lights be a symbol of our continuing commitment to the work of racial justice and to our emphatic proclamation that Black Lives Matter.
And now Carolyn and Kevin Clark will perform our opening hymn, Step by Step, the Longest March.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form and arch, singly none, singly none. And by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
Now Sarah will lead us in joys and sorrows.
Yes, it's now the time in our service when we share, and we invite you to share your joys and sorrows. It's also the time where if you're coming for the first time, you can introduce yourself in the chat or otherwise. To share your joy or sorrow, you can put your words in the chat and I can read them, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and say them yourself. I'm looking to see if anybody's written anything. Or please help me, Sally, to see if people have raised their hands and want to speak. So I see Suzanne O'Callahan has said, my sons are all safe. Well, that is a joy. Go ahead, Sally.
Well, I had a joy yesterday with a lot of other people. Vincent and Tondi spoke at a Peace Action of Staten Island awards event, and he had written this book, African Americans Against the Bomb, and he's just amazing and so inspiring. He just gave us a history lesson in 30 minutes. I'll send around the recording. I think everybody would really enjoy it.
I had a joy. I went with Mike Stein and Maureen Curran to NJPAC in Newark for the first time, and we saw a great show. Chris McBride's orchestra and choir did all this original music, and it was inspired by and set to the words of Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. It was really cool. And before that, I didn't have a program because of COVID, but before the actual work began, there was a warm-up act, which was a bunch of poets whose names I don't know, except that at least one of the poems was written by Amiri Baraka, and it was performed by his son, the mayor of Newark.
Wow.
So it was very cool. And people in the audience seemed to know the poets, but I think the actual poems that were done were written maybe 50 years ago. They came out of the civil rights movement. So they weren't familiar to me, but they were definitely familiar to the audience. And it was a wonderful evening.
Yeah.
Let me see. So I see Louise Lassard, hi Louise, says, I appreciate seeing lovely, familiar faces here again.
Yes, you too.
And we appreciate seeing yours. How are you?
Good day.
All right, I think perhaps we have no more joys and sorrows, and no one new is stepping up to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, everybody. Thanks for everything you shared. And now let's take a moment to reflect on what people have shared and to also just reflect on the things in our hearts. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to take a moment to share a reflection on our second Unitarian Universalist principle, to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. We're very familiar with the first principle, to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. But the second principle takes us some steps beyond that. Here is a reflection on the second principle from the Reverend Emily Gage. She says, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations points us towards something beyond inherent worth and dignity. It points us to the larger community. It gets at collective responsibility. It reminds us that treating people as human beings is not something that we simply do one-on-one, but it's something that has systemic implications and can inform our entire cultural way of being. Compassion is something that we can easily act on individually. We can demonstrate openness, give people respect, and treat people with kindness on our own. but we need one another to achieve equity and justice. Justice, equity, and compassion are all part of the same package. Just as the second principle overlaps with the first, so it is related to the seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence. Our guest today, Cesar Vargas, is one who is fully engaged in collective responsibility, who has dedicated himself to not only lifting up the oppressed, the marginalized, the brutalized among the undocumented in our community and in communities around the nation, but who has now further extended his reach to advocate for immigrants who serve in our armed forces. Cesar is well known to us here on Staten Island. He has spoken from the pulpit in our sanctuary about his experience of coming to this country at the age of 5 after his father passed away. As a dreamer or an undocumented young person growing up in New York City, Cesar overcame countless obstacles to achieve a landmark victory in becoming New York State's first undocumented lawyer. Through the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, DACA, and much needed advocacy, he was able to fix his immigration status and enlist in the US Army Reserves. And it is through that service that he became aware of the discrimination that immigrants face both during their time in service and afterwards in trying to attain citizenship. It is to this segment of the immigrant population that Cesar has now turned his attention through the creation of legal services focused on veterans' immigration status, something he had already started to develop with key partners, including elected officials at the city, state, and federal level. So now, let us welcome Cesar Vargas.
Hi, buenos dias, everyone. My name is Cesar Vargas. It's a great pleasure. Ruth, Sally, Sarah, everyone, you all are incredible supporters and allies, and it's definitely an honor and blessed that I'm here talking with you all and just having an opportunity to really tell this step and that I have taken to really bring back the support that so many people have given me and really remind ourselves of why we're here on Staten Island and across the nation and why we're fighting this fight in Washington, D.C. to ensure that we bring dignity to all lives that are risking their lives for a better opportunity because their home country, because of foreign intervention, that people come here to try to seek that better opportunity. Just as my mother, who risked everything, who crossed the US-Mexico border, risking everything, but with the hopes that one day her son, her family could have a better opportunity, that one day her son could become an attorney. And that's why I'm committed to the work that I did. I can imagine that my mom took a decision to leave everything behind. I remember the last day that we were in Mexico, and she went to pick me and my younger siblings up. And for me at that time, at 5 years old, I found it just like out of the ordinary that she was picking me up and not going home. And of course, at 5 years old, all I know that I wanted to just go home and play with my toys. But I didn't know that it was something that was unexpected, that she took us to the town cathedral. And I have a picture of that last day. And in that picture, I'm in the middle with my two sisters. They were about 8 and 10 years old with the school gray skirt uniform. My little brother to my left with his yellow jumpsuits, blue stripes, and I'm in the middle. And my mother next to us, towering in a beautiful blue dress. And in that picture, I noticed that there was no carry-ons, no luggages, just a plastic bag that my mom had our documents, medical records, school records, birth certificates. But also in that bag, she had our hopes and dreams, just as many immigrants are doing right now as we speak from Central America. Just as my mother came here almost 30 years ago, and just as many of your ancestors, your grandparents, your loved ones who came here seeking a better opportunity, seeking a world where perhaps one day we can all be treated equal, and that we can have the dignity and respect and just the appreciation of each other's humanity. And this is the work that I do, because right now the struggle for human rights, the struggle for immigrant rights continues. Currently in Washington, D.C., we still have this battle over allowing millions of immigrants, of our immigrant brothers and sisters, our neighbors, who are trying to get a path to citizenship. Right now, there is a big debate over a budget bill, a infrastructure bill that President Biden is trying to get through. However, one of the key components that we are advocating is to ensure that within this budget bill, there is a path to citizenship that would give that ability for people to tap into the existing system, but also to ability for dreamers, immigrant workers, domestic workers, day laborers to have the path to citizenship and finally be on a road to permanent protection. Unfortunately, right now we have the Senate Democrats have presented a proposal to the budget parliamentarian. This is essentially an advisor of the Senate of whether or not certain key components could be included in the budget, because Democrats are trying to present this budget because it's a faster way to get certain key policy provisions included. And it only requires majority, simple majority, 51 votes. And that is something that we can get immigration reform just with 51 votes, unlike previous times where we have not been able to get any type of immigration because of the Republican filibuster, because Republicans and some Democrats have blocked the immigration for almost 3 decades. So there is a very, very important moment right now where we can have a path to citizenship for millions of immigrants. We just need to remind our elected leaders in Washington, D.C. and at the local level to keep fighting for a path to citizenship, but also to keep fighting for dignity and respect for those immigrants who are crossing the U.S.-Mexico border right now. We saw very well over the past few weeks. I'm sure, I don't know if you all saw, but we can see how overall our immigration system is inherently discriminatory, inherently racist. When you see Border Patrol in horses whipping immigrants and mostly Black immigrants. We did not see that when Europeans were coming. We did not see that when immigrants from Central or Latinos were coming. But we see this very discriminatory and distinct reaction by immigration authorities when it's the color of your skin dictates how you're treated, and that's unacceptable. And that's why we're here, because we want to make sure, I want to make sure, and I'm working with at my current job at the city council, as well as with to ensure that all these families that are at the border, to ensure that incredible advocates across the country are getting the support they need. And we have also on the other side of the world with Afghans who were able to, some of them and most of them were able to escape from Afghanistan after working with U.S. authorities, and many of them are still in military bases. So we're trying to get justice for them to ensure that they can get out of military bases and into our communities where they can actually live their life free and actually live their life with dignity. And that turns me to the last point that Ruth mentioned about the work that I'm doing currently right now. For me, one of the reasons that I wanted to join the military is because it's perhaps something that does not really get covered by the advocacy that so many great people do, and at least for what we see is for me one of the reasons that in high school I learned that there were immigrants who were joining the Union Army because they were committed to joining an effort to abolish slavery. And for me, that was one that really touched me, because for me, I know for a fact, and just as I've seen in my service, and just as I've seen throughout history, not only have immigrants have served our armed forces since the founding of this nation, but we have also joined our armed forces because we do believe in a world where war is not the answer, in a world where military response is not the answer. And I believe that those soldiers, those Marines, those who wear uniform are also our brothers, our sisters, our loved ones, our spouses. And 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 seeing the discriminatory effect of how the military and the US government sometimes made it harder for immigrants to become citizens. For me, it was like, if the US government is not gonna support them, then I will, then we will, then our neighbors will. And we want to make sure that, if notwithstanding the military response of what we see in the politics, but that I believe that we can help our neighbors as human beings, regardless of what uniform you wear, regardless of the work that you do. You still have raise your hand. Especially for me, I as someone who came to this country, and someone who is blessed to have these opportunities that I've gotten. I feel that this is the way I am able to give back. I'm able to give back through my military service, by helping my community, by getting involved, and by ensuring that we are truly protecting those rights for each and one of us, to elevate their voice, to criticize, to challenge our government without fear of reprisal, without fear of violence, without fear that their own government will target them. And it's a long road ahead to ensure that we truly achieve justice and a government that can work for the people. But in the meantime, I am not going to turn my back on those immigrants, those in our military who are seeking love and compassion, whether they're homeless, whether they're immigrants, or whether they're going through emotional and psychological trauma that puts them on a path of destruction, including suicide. And for me, all the work. This is everything that I've seen through my military service. And for me, as a lawyer, I've seen the obstacle after obstacle of immigrants being confronted with a two-front war. On the one hand, we have a broken civilian immigration system that has leave so many people behind, including dreamers, that has put soldiers behind, including veterans who have been deported. And on the other hand, we have a rigid chain of command where it's so hard to just literally get one piece of document signed by a colonel, by a general. So if so, just I guess it just for me, like seeing like if for me, an 18-year-old private trying to get one signature by a colonel, by a general, is nearly impossible. And this is where the work that I hope to do, and this is the work that I'm doing, and I hope to bring together with you all, is to ensure that we are bringing those legal resources, that legal advocate that can support soldiers, that can support service members who are going through a broken immigration system, who are going through a rigid chain of command, and to ensure that they know they have a legal advocate on their side, to ensure that they have a champion on their side, and most importantly, to remind them that they have a community on their side. For so long, even for myself, when I wanted to join the armed forces, when I wanted to, even when I did join the armed force, and in the advocacy that I did, I definitely got the pushback and sometimes stiff arm of like even my community when I said, Cesar, why are you joining the military? You're just going to be part of this military industrial complex that's just tearing people apart, including displacing families across the world. And and I can see that isolation sometimes where your community turns your back on you because you wear a certain uniform. And for me, this is where I want to remind our soldiers and remind all of us that we cannot forget the humanity. We cannot ignore the compassion and dignity of our neighbors. And for me, this is why I'm trying to do the work that I do, to remind my soldiers who are now under me, who I want to be able to let them know that I want to be able to see them get the citizenship. I want to be able to see them go to college, to ensure that ultimately they are out of the service and they can live a life of fulfillment and advocacy for their communities. That if the military or if the government didn't help them when they were there, I want them to know that their government, their community was always behind them, and they should continue to get involved in, whether in the North Shore, South Shore, and or across the city or across the country, and be involved in the fight for social justice, be involved in the fight for equality, and ensure that just as other soldiers supported you, you need to support other people, and remind them that we cannot leave anyone behind. That's something that we learn in the military. We cannot leave our battle buddy behind. We cannot leave our a fellow soldier, a Marine behind. And that's what I want to be able to ensure, that we are reminding young soldiers, especially soldiers of color, who are out there going out and then come back and sometimes feel they have their back turned on them, that they know that they have a champion who can get them their citizenship, who can get them involved in the community, who can get them involved with a movement to ensure that military response is not the answer, to ensure that we can come together and respect the dignity, including reminding our elected officials that the military is just a tool. It's not the only tool that we should respond with anything when it comes to turmoil around the world, or even in our own streets. That it shouldn't be the military responding to protests or anything that will put our communities at harm's way. And for me, I truly believe that when I wear my uniform, I am there as a guardian of our rights. I am there as a guardian of ensuring that people can still feel that this country is a light that can protect and that can push against all those social injustices, and that we can bring together. And it's I'm just like kind of recounting one of the stories of one of my clients who's also my soldier, and it's so powerful because throughout basic training, he was from Nepal, and he still had a very deep accent, and not a lot of people could understand him. But eventually, me and him got to talk to each other, and I can understand him perfectly. And I was his advocate there. And even though sometimes I got in trouble by commanders, because they used to tell me, Cesar, you're not a lawyer here, you're not an advocate here, you're just a soldier. Follow the orders. I still wanted to push ahead, because he couldn't get his citizenship. He lost his green card, and eventually, through the work that we were able to do, including with other soldiers and other commanders who did support me to ensure that we can get his citizenship, he eventually became naturalized. And something that he told me is that no one needs to understand me, but you did, Caesar. And no one needs to understand me until you came along and you fought for me. And I reminded him that I fought for him because so many people fought for me, including here on Staten Island, including so many people here in this room fought for me, and fought for the rights and respected the rights of our immigrant communities. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget that we cannot turn our back on our communities. And now, as a citizen, I cannot forget the 30 years that I was undocumented. Now, as a soldier, I cannot forget all those soldiers who are going through the rigorous and sometimes difficult process that people go through just to get their citizenship. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I want to be able to thank you all And I can definitely answer any questions more on technicalities on the individual process. But it's right now we are going through a process where we're finally acknowledging that the government is finally acknowledging that there's immigrants in our military. The government is finally acknowledging that we should do something to support immigrants in our armed forces. Just this year, President Biden announced a joint effort between the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense to bring back deported veterans, to provide those resources to immigrants in our armed forces. I also organized a city council hearing where we were able to bring in the Commission of Immigrant Affairs and the Commission of Veteran Services to really get them to work together. And shockingly, well, not surprisingly, but shockingly, we heard testimony from the Department of Veteran Services that from 2017 to 2021, they have only helped 10 immigrants who are in our armed forces in a city of almost 45,000 immigrants who are either veterans or actively serving. And that's unacceptable. But we have taken the first step to remind the city, to remind the state that, and the federal government, that we need to support these individuals, men and women who are wearing uniform, and they're supporting and they're serving their country. And we need to do more. And I know we're going to do incredible work together, because I believe that here on Staten Island, we have, as the borough with the highest population of veterans in all other boroughs, we can show that we are respecting the service of those who, even though they were not born here, they're taking an oath to defend our rights. And some of them have made the ultimate sacrifice, even though they were never a citizen. They were never a day a citizen. So this is really about honoring their service. This is honoring their commitment to a country that it may not have treated them well, but at least for a country where we can have hope, where we can truly have a country that will treat everyone with dignity and respect and compassion. And I know we're going to be able to do that because we have incredible people here in this Zoom room. And I look forward to working with you all. And I look forward to working with you all to ensure that we truly bring this fulfillment of hope and true justice to Staten Island and to those bases around the world and in New York, and remind them that we truly honor their service. So thank you so much. And Ruth, I'll pass it back to you all, and we look forward to working together.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cesar. This is just wonderful. And just for everybody to let you know, he will be joining us for our coffee hour. And so any questions that you have, just hold on to them, because he will be here with us to talk about some of the specifics of what he's doing now. Thank you very much, Cesar. And now we have Kevin and Carolyn, who will be presenting our offertory music. And so Kevin and Carolyn, I turn it over to you.
You don't have to. Okay.
For everyone born, a place at the table. For everyone born, clean water and bread, a shelter, a space, a safe place for growing. For everyone born, a start overhead. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. at the table, a voice to be heard, a part in the song, the hands of a child in hands that are wrinkled, for young and for old, the right to belong. For everyone born, a place at the table, to live without fear, and simply to be, to work, to speak out, to witness, to worship. For everyone born, the right to be free. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yet God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, creators of justice, creators of joy.
And now Sarah? Sarah?
Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, I was waiting for the full screen, Ruth. Now is the time when we take an offering. We know it is the gifts of all of us that make it possible for us to gather together. Links and instructions are posted in the chat. You can mail a check, or you can give to our PayPal giving page. Please give as generously as you can. Your offering will now be gratefully received.
Thank you, Sarah. And while you're doing that, again, Carolyn and Kevin will sing for us, will play and sing for us, Answering the Call of Love.
Here we go.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
Thank you, Kevin and Carolyn. And now we have Sarah is going to extinguish the chalice.
I invite you to join me in extinguishing the chalice. Please repeat after me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth,
But not the light
or the
of-
warmth of community,
or the warmth of community,
or the fire of commitment,
or the fire of commitment.
For these we carry in our hearts
For these we carry in our hearts
until we are together again.
until we are together again. Thank you, Sarah. Closing words from the Reverend Darcy Roque. Each of us ministers to a weary world. There's too much hardship in this world not to find joy every day. There's too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There's too much pain in this world not to heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day.